From the Weather NorCal Command Center, this is your Evening Update.
American Door Company has been family-owned and operated for over 29 years, supplying Northern California with quality garage doors, garage door openers, and installed with the best service you'd expect from a locally owned company. We serve all of Northern California from Willows all the way up to the Oregon state line. Give us a call today.
Good evening, everyone. Those temperatures are starting to drop here, and we're going to be kind of leveling out here over the next few days before we see an even bigger drop over the weekend. Speaking of the weekend, we got some thunderstorms in the forecast, mainly for the mountains. We'll get into that a little bit later, but long range, I'm really not seeing any more big heat waves heading away anytime soon. There's a little bit of a concern towards the middle and latter part of next week, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But first, here's a look at your Krueger's Quickcast for your Wednesday, August 13th. Tonight, we're going to be looking at temperatures actually dropping down cooler than we've seen. So if you do those early morning walks, boy, look forward to some cooler temperatures to start off that day. Temperatures in the 40s and 50s for the higher elevations and mid-50s with some of that dense fog developing late tonight for many of you along the coast. So out the door tomorrow morning, looks like we are going to see the mainly sunny skies for the valley, for the mountains, but that fog really pretty dense, as a matter of fact, to start off the day. For the north coast, temperatures there in the mid-50s. So we still have that broad ridge of high pressure that's been in place, but you see all the clouds up to our north over the Gulf of Alaska and Canada. Well, those are storm systems that have been riding over the ridge and breaking away at that ridge throughout the last few days, and that's why our temperatures are dropping. Now you can see the fog that develops along the coast, pretty dense, working its way down the Highway 101 corridor there, getting closer to Garberville, but otherwise you're looking at clear and sunny skies for the rest of Northern California. The good news is we actually get to see some breaks in those clouds and some clearing for the coast for Thursday afternoon. Maybe some afternoon cumulus clouds in the mountains for your Thursday, but otherwise dry. Then by Thursday night, we start to see those clouds begin to move back in for the coast with that fog. All right, so for your Thursday, temperatures in the mid to upper 90s. We're actually going to see temperatures maybe increase a little bit here, but generally staying in the upper 90s for places like Redding and the mid 90s for places like Chico. Temperatures are dropping for Trinity County in particular there. Temperatures low to mid 90s. And you can see for the coast, temperatures in the low to mid 60s. All right, we'll take a look at that 7-day outlook for the valley. And again, hovering around 100 degrees here for Redding through Friday, with a drop in the temperatures here for Saturday and Sunday. And the temperatures kind of staying in the cooler as we go into early next week. For the coast, maybe some showers on Saturday. There's that chance for thunderstorms inland and for Trinity County over the weekend. We'll take a closer look at that and what that all means coming up in just a bit. And of course, we also have that chance for thunderstorms for the rest of the mountains through the weekend. But the other thing to really take note is the cooler temperatures back down to the 80s for most of the mountains this weekend, and even really for your Thursday, Friday, and even going into next week as well. All right, that's a look at your Krueger's Quickcast. Now let's take a look at the free Weather NorCal app that you have access to. I want to talk about that for a second because it's a great app, folks. This is all about being hyper-local. And here's the other cool thing is the latest version of the app, you can now do widgets, not only on your home screen, but on your lock screen on the iPhone as well. So when your lock screen is on, you can see at a quick glance what the current temperature is and what the 7-day forecast is. And if you want more information, tap on it. It takes you right into the app and look at all of this great information. Again, keep in mind, there are a lot of apps out there for weather, but they're all AI generated. This is a local forecast, folks. I generate a forecast. It goes into the app, it goes into the website, the 24-hour streaming channel, and the maps that you see here. So let's get into that. Let's get into our deeper dive forecast. Here is your fire weather forecast, and you can see those winds. Yeah, starting off tomorrow morning, they shouldn't be all that bad, right? But then they start to pick up. Look at this bullseye of really strong winds here west of the valley, but also some strong winds coming in from the north for central Siskiyou County, Shasta Valley, right? Modoc County and the eastern mountains, and a bit of a strong winds here down into our southern Humboldt County as well. Now, the winds typically have been dying down in the morning. Not the case on Friday morning. Still a bit breezy, and from the north, unfortunately, that's really when things start to dry out. So we also have the winds getting even stronger by Friday afternoon. You want to talk about some elevated fire risk. Look at those winds gusting upwards of 25, 30 miles per hour. This, my friends, is when we start getting a little bit more elevated than your typical day-to-day elevated fire weather risk. This is when we got to go, all right, let's really pay attention to this, because this could create some problems should a new fire start. So let's take a look at the fire weather risk here. And you can see as we go into Thursday afternoon, there's that bullseye where we're seeing those stronger winds. That's the elevated fire risk. But elsewhere, it's mainly just in that low to moderate, even off into the mountains. All right, but take a look at Friday. Friday is when we see those winds begin to pick up. Friday midday, you see that? We're already starting to see by midday getting into that high fire weather risk. And you can bet that that's going to be well into the oranges for most of the valley by the time we get into Friday afternoon as well. So let's take a look at our satellite image. All these storm systems have been riding over that ridge of high pressure, breaking it down, allowing our temperatures to drop. And eventually some energy here is going to work its way down into the Gulf of Alaska. And that is what's also going to help our temperatures drop a bit. But I also want to point you in the direction of the Western Pacific. You see right here? It's a lot of moisture, folks. Now we have, the characteristics of an atmospheric river making its way into the Gulf of Alaska, and then eventually pointing itself into the Pacific Northwest, where they're probably going to see some decent rain out of this stream of moisture coming right into the Pacific Northwest. That's through the rest of the week. However, look at by the weekend. It actually shifts to the south. So we have this nice stream of moisture heading right into Northern California. Now, I don't anticipate this to be a standard, typical atmospheric river, but what it is going to be is a very good moisture source for the mountains to tap into for some afternoon thunderstorms. Not only Saturday, but Sunday as well. And then by Sunday into Monday, that shifts to the south and things dry out even more. There you can see the drier air really working its way back in by the time we do get into Monday. All right, so let's take a look at Futurecast, kind of walk you through the next couple of days and then beyond that. So here you go. Thursday morning, yeah, we're looking at some pretty dense fog for some of you along the coast, some of the inland valleys, but clear skies elsewhere. Now the good news is, look at this, the fog may dissipate. We're actually going to see some sunshine for your Thursday afternoon along the coast. I think a welcome sight, right? And then of course you can see maybe a couple of clouds developing, especially off into the eastern mountains, but otherwise dry conditions for your Thursday. Here's Friday morning, that fog returns. It's going to be fairly dense again, working its way down even to Garberville, possibly too. That's Friday morning. Friday afternoon, actually, Futurecast wants to paint in a chance for a few showers popping up parts of Siskiyou County. So already we're beginning to see some of that moisture working its way in and some of that instability. But I think the bulk of it won't be here until Saturday. So let's take a look at that. Here's Friday, there's the dry conditions. There you can see that moisture working its way in. We have that stream of moisture, we have that moisture source, and that is going to allow those thunderstorms to really develop here for Saturday afternoon for the mountains. Really, I think everywhere in the mountains, even the inland areas, has that chance. Now, it's getting pretty aggressive and showing some rain for the valley. That's not entirely out of the question. Can that sustain? Can the very dry atmosphere sustain that and allow us to actually see some raindrops? Not out of the question. It would probably be, it looks like at this point, a Saturday night, early Sunday morning event, so most of you would be asleep and wouldn't even notice it, but I think most of it's going to be in the mountains. There you can see Sunday, right? More showers and more thunderstorms, but then remember that moisture source is shifting southward, and then we're drying things out for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But I've got my eyes on right over here. We're going to take a close look at this here in just a second here, but that is a big ridge of high pressure. There's some serious heat associated with that. Should it expand more into our region, we're talking some pretty hot temperatures. So let's take a look at that. Here's the overall trend that we've been dealing with here. And really what we've got here are these storms I was talking about, how they're riding up over the north. What that's doing is it's pushing this heat off to the east, it's pushing this heat off to the west. So for the rest of this week, this weekend, early next week, we've got this mild air coming in from the Gulf of Alaska, working its way down southward, and that's keeping this heat over here, and that's keeping this heat over here, and as a result, we see that. But that's also destabilizing the atmosphere, allowing that moisture to work its way in and give us those thunderstorms I was talking about over the weekend. But look what happens. We're going to start to see this retreat a little bit here, and it's going to have a hard time moving any closer to us. As a result, this is starting to build in. This is getting stronger over the desert southwest, and it's trying to build into Northern California, but it's having a hard time thanks to this trough of low pressure right here. But you see how it's showing signs of backing off a little bit? That would allow this to really build back in by the middle and latter part of next week. However, I've got my eyes on this. This could potentially kind of come back in and kind of keep that off to our east, which would mean not quite as hot. So we'll have to see. There is the potential for some bigger heat by the end of next week, but for now it looks like we may be looking at some of this cooler air kind of moving on in. All right, so here's your 10-day trend. There you can see for Reading in particular, right? Hovering around 100 degrees, around normal. And then we're back down below normal. Nice little dip in the temperatures for the weekend, early next week, and then back up to right around normal again. So a little bit of a mini roller coaster ride, if you will, but at least for the next 10 days, no major heat waves. And looking at the wave heights, we're actually seeing the wave heights dropping significantly, especially by the time we get into Friday. So no small craft advisory concerns there. And overall, just that dense fog. So here's your neighborhood forecast, sponsored in part by Dignity Health. Taking a look at Trinity County, you've got those temperatures in the 90s, no more triple digits. Yeah, we're finally starting to break away from that. We'll call it mid-90s, mid-90s on average for the Highway 299 corridor. 96 degrees in Trinity Center. Ruth, about 89. Mad River getting to a little bit more manageable temperature there at 84 degrees. There's that chance for thunderstorms over the weekend for Trinity County. All right, for the North Coast neighborhood forecast brought to you by Dignity Health. The coast, I've actually included a chance for showers on Saturday with that system kind of passing on through. Otherwise, mid to upper 60s for the next 7 days for your daytime highs. Take you up north, I've got the chance for thunderstorms inland for your Saturday, but not necessarily Sunday. We'll see. Sunday, I may put that back in, but for now, I'm taking it out for Sunday. You'll also notice much cooler by the weekend and early next week. Your Dignity Health Siskiyou County neighborhood forecast, temperatures mainly 80s, or some 90s, 93 degrees for Happy Camp, but mainly in the 80s, 85 for Weed, 87 for Mount Shasta. Speaking of Mount Shasta, there's your 7-day forecast, thunderstorms. In fact, all of Siskiyou County has the chance for thunderstorms for Saturday and Sunday. It dries out and even cools off a little bit here for Monday of next week. For Modoc County, temperatures in the upper 80s for the most part, mid to upper 80s for Modoc County. There's that chance for thunderstorms over the weekend. The Eastern Mountains, you're looking at temperatures 80s and 90s for your Thursday, 82 degrees for Mineral, 80 for Viola, Paradise 89, chance for thunderstorms over the weekend. Your Dignity Health Valley neighborhood forecast, temperatures in the low to mid 90s already by Thursday, especially for places like Durham. Chico, though, about 96 for Corning, and Pasquinta about 97 degrees. So let's take a look at that 7-day forecast, starting off with Chico. Yeah, you got your temperatures down to the low 90s by Saturday, upper 80s, yeah, by Sunday, Monday, and then back in the 90s for Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. Take you out to the north, we're flirting with 100 degrees, and some of us could touch 100 degrees for the north end of the valley. 95 degrees for Lakehead, 97 for Red Bluff, and looking at that 7-day forecast for Reading. Again, as I mentioned, hovering around 100 degrees for your Thursday and Friday, dropping over the weekend, and we keep that drop as we go into early next week, and then a bit of a climb in those temperatures for Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. That's your evening update. I'll be back again tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. and live on Coffee with Krueger at 6:30. Have a great night.
Construction season is well underway in the North State, and we'd like to remind drivers to slow down around work zones. Keep Caltrans workers safe when they're on the job, and remember to be work zone alert when you see the color orange. Remember to pay attention to signs, merge early, avoid distractions, and don't speed. This message is brought to you by Caltrans District 2.